that's all set up and good to go. And you are
Okay.
welcome to admit people as you want.
All right.
And
I'll just,
I'll admit as they join, like once you're set.
okay. Okay, it's about time. I know people are still coming in, and I will, or Oscar will let them in when it's time. So we're going to go ahead and get started. If you see me drink out of a giant mug, it's because I get thirsty. So that's why I have a giant mug. So first off, hi everyone. So when I say the phrase video games, what do you think of? For some people, it may be traditional titles. Think Mario, Call of Duty, Pokemon. For others, it could be newer games like Helldivers, Pow World, or Baldur's Gate. However, the first thing that comes to your mind is probably not academic research or how games can be applied to that research. But thinking of games in terms of research and academia is actually my job. So, hi, my name is Joy Dubose, and I am the Extended Reality and Gaming Librarian at Mississippi State University. To answer your very next question, yes, this is a thing. Video games are no stranger to research, and there are many academic journals, museum exhibits, and peer-reviewed articles, all with video games as their focus. For this session, I will cover several different aspects of being an extended reality and gaming librarian. like how in the world did I get into this job? Some research aspects involving video games, and then some outreach and programming aspects, and quite literally what has worked and what hasn't. So you might be wondering just what is a gaming librarian and how in the world did you become one? When I started at Mississippi State in 2017, I didn't start off as a research librarian or an outreach specialist or any other job directly dealing with the public. I started off as the exact opposite. I was a cataloger with a personal interest in video games. More specifically, I was the cataloger for our special collections. Now, it's quite a change from working on rare books and serials and posters to video games. However, in 2020, I was given the unique task of cataloging the library's collection of purchased virtual reality materials. Now, Mississippi State has tenure, and the library faculty goes through the tenure process as well. As an assistant professor, I was required to do a certain amount of research to meet my tenure goals. A great deal of my research focused on virtual reality and its place in libraries. This research continued and has expanded and grown to include video games. And in 2023, two important events happened that pulled me from cataloger to gaming librarian. The first was when I was accepted to present at the Popular Culture Association on the impact of the video game, This War of Mine. Secondly, my dean asked me to give an in-house presentation of this game for faculty, staff, and an international student who was shadowing various members of our library. For those who are not familiar with the game, This War of Mine is by 11-Bit Studios and shows the lives of refugees in a war-torn city. It is based off of the siege of Sarajevo that took place during the Bosnian War, which was the longest siege of a capital city in modern history. The reason that this game is of particular interest to librarians is because it was added to the recommended reading list for Polish schools. It is the first video game to be added to a school reading list. This presentation opened the eyes of many of the MSU library faculty and staff that video games had gone beyond the early days of Mario and Pac-Man. After this presentation, our dean started to jokingly call me the gaming librarian. Except, well, she wasn't joking. We had a meeting to discuss things, and afterwards, I had a brand new title, duties, the works. So great, grand, wonderful, peachy keen. But what does a gaming librarian do? And how are video games used in research? First, there are two types of games that are used in research. They're the video games that we think of. They're the Marios, they're the Pokemons, the Links, the Zeldas, all of that. And then there are the serious games. Now, the term serious games can be confusing. After all, there are many people who would consider plenty of entertaining games to be serious. What this term describes are games which are aimed for problem solving rather than entertainment. These are games that many would call educational games. Some examples of serious games are Duolingo, Darfur is Dying, and Feudaclass Education. These games are designed specifically to teach a behavior or skill. Many of those in psychology and the science have an interest in serious games and how such games can measure people's reactions to different choices and people's different thought processes while making these choices. I have listed here a couple of articles describing research involving serious games. So you can see the meta-analysis of the cognitive and motivational effects of serious games by the Journal of Educational Psychology, designing a BIM-based serious game for fire safety evaluation simulations by Advanced Engineering Informatics, and then mapping learning and game mechanics for serious game analysis by the British Journal of Educational Technology. As you can see, they range in disciplines. It's not just one, it's psychology to engineering. Now, you may have also heard of the term gamification, which tends to go hand in hand with serious gaming. Gamification is using game mechanics to engage users better. For example, putting video game aspects in your yearly cyber threat training so it engages your employees better instead of making them go to sleep. Some of the more popular disciplines that use gamification are education, business, and the health fields. Now, I imagine that all of this sounds very technical, and you may be thinking this research doesn't sound like it's very fun or have any AAA title that I have played. Well, while some research involves serious games, other research has been done on entertainment games, both indie and AAA. Just because a game was created for entertainment purposes does not mean it can't be the subject of academic interest. As you can see here, Red Dead Redemption 2 has an entire college course based off of it. Museums, such as MoMA, have used these games as part of exhibits, and there are a plethora of peer-reviewed articles, book chapters, what have you, that are based off of these entertainment games. But I'm really getting ahead of myself. Let's go back, September 2023, got a new title, new duties, new office. Now I'm the gaming librarian, and I have absolutely no idea where to go from there. There are not many research librarians that focus primarily on video games, so I was a bit of a loss on how to move forward. Eventually, I decided to split my job into 3 different aspects: have outreach, teaching and workshops, and programming. So let's start off with outreach. Hearing my title, I generally get 3 different reactions. That's cool, that's preposterous, and we have one of those? The initial outreach that I did was designed to introduce me to faculty and show them the different aspects of using video games and how it could be applied to academic research classes. Because while the library knew, oh, there are more things than Mario and Pac-Man, a lot of our faculty did not. So, starting off with research. Hearing my title, sorry, skip that. One general faculty meeting was with the engineering department. This meeting went pretty smoothly. It was about 5 minutes long. I kept things very short, very brief, and basically limited to what I am and what I can do for you. In response, I had several faculty members meet with me afterwards to talk about having games in their classes and which ones would be beneficial. However, I also met with some students and faculty from the history department. They were less enthusiastic about video game prospects, and one faculty member told me it just wouldn't work for his area of study. One big lesson I learned when dealing with faculty is some will be enthused and some will think you're minorly insane. Keep it short, sweet, have good points, and don't get discouraged. I've had far more outreach opportunities with students than I have had with faculty members, and each of them yielded different results. These opportunities can be divided into student groups and just large gatherings of students. One such large gathering was the Day 1 experience. Mississippi State University has a program called Emerging Leaders, formerly Day 1 for students, for freshman students. One of my first student outreach experiences was Day 1, where I spoke to 5 different groups of 20 plus students in 30 minutes, meaning I ran from one classroom to another, giving a 5-minute speech from the hip to incoming freshmen. In quick format, I told them what I did, that yes, we have VR, and to please visit the library. Some of them had questions about upcoming programs, and others wanted to go to the library immediately after the class. While this didn't leave much time for formal instruction, it did make students more interested in the library and what were some of the fun things they could do. Another such large gathering was when I spoke to freshman students who were on tour of the library. We did several large tours in conjunction with different classes, and I talked to as many of these classes as possible. Again, just introducing myself, my job, what I could help with, etc. These large gatherings were less about formal instruction and more about, hi, this is my name, this is what I do, come visit. My office was and is still decked out with a range of video game posters, which is very different than many of my coworkers. So for the smaller student groups, I still focus more on introduction and less instruction, but like talking to the faculty, it was based off of what can the library do for you? The big goal here was to develop a working relationship with student groups and bring them more into the library. The two main groups that I spoke to were the tabletop gaming group and the esports group. The contact with the esports group fizzled out relatively quickly. This was due to a drop in communication despite my best efforts. However, the tabletop group remains a good connection. They have reached out to me several times, and I'm hoping to partner with them in future projects. With student outreach, the big thing is to not look like a traditional librarian. I'm the gaming librarian, so I better look the part and I better act like it. For the majority of my student outreach, I wore gaming t-shirts and jeans. Sometimes skeptical students would shoot a look at me and I get used to saying, I'm an original OG Nintendo gamer, and I built a gaming PC. Also, during question sessions, they would ask, what's your favorite game? I would have a list ready to go. This initial outreach was again designed to get students interested in the library and get them to contact us or just come into the building. It was during my individual workshops that I was able to talk more about video game research and how it could be applied. So, getting into research and class sessions. This is where I do some heavy teaching on video game research. And I know you've just been itching to get to this part. Last semester, I held individual workshops and also guest spoke in a class for the past couple of semesters. It was the class participation that I got the most interaction about fun games, whereas my individual workshops, I got more questions about serious games. When I have talked to students, especially in the humanities, about using video games in research, there are several ideas that I share. These are general topics which help them to start thinking about video games in a research light. One idea is you can compare video games with the original works they're based off of. There are a ton of video games that depict Alice in Wonderland, like here, Alice Madness Returns. How do these line up with the original works by Lewis Carroll? Do they show the themes that Carroll had in the books? Do they show Alice's madness? Another example are the games that are depicted as Lovecraftian. How do they line up with the works of H.P. Lovecraft? Do they follow the themes of his works? Students can also look at the characters of individual games and how they progress through the story. Do these characters' actions make sense and do they fit the storyline? One example I give is for this character development of Paladin Danse in Fallout 4. Just a side note, this contains spoilers, but the game's been out for a while, so we're going forward. Paladin Danse is part of the Brotherhood of Steel, which persecutes synthetic humans. Later on, Danse discovers that he is one of these synthetics, and yet still thinks the Brotherhood of Steel has the right idea and supports the persecution, despite the fact that he is now one of the synthetics. Does this character progression make sense, or how should it change? Students at some point will say, oh, I only play Sims or Stardew Valley. These are possible for research as well. Scholars have written articles about Stardew Valley, some of which focus on just the gameplay itself, and others focus on more serious aspects such as the several listed here. One of note is from the Journal of Gaming and Virtual Worlds, which is, and I love this title, Playing Farmer at the Intersections of Neoliberal Capitalism and Eco-Criticism in Stardew Valley. And you thought it was a cozy gaming sim. I also point to mention for those that are interested in teaching aspects, things like Stardew Valley can be used as a creative writing prompt. For example, okay, you're a farmer in a new town. You've met the mayor, you have a rundown cottage, it's day one, you just got in, what do? And go. For those that are familiar, this is literally the beginning of Stardew Valley. Another game that I bring up to students is the game Frostpunk. For those that are not familiar with it, this game focuses on the end of the world. Not by zombie invasion, but by an ice age. You're literally freezing to death. As part of the game, the people in your city have to be kept in a good supply of coal, food, and shelter. You also have to keep the morale of the people up. After a certain point in the game, you can either choose to invest in religion or law to help with this failing morale. My question to students is, which one do you choose and why? In both religion and law, you can go too far with public penance, propaganda, and persecution. Do you cross the line and become a dictator? Why or why not? One of the last examples that I give to humanity classes and even psychology students is to look at the trauma of different characters. Is this trauma accurate to real life? One such game is Hellblade, Suana's, and I pronounce it wrong every time, Sacrifice. The main character is dealing with grief and also struggles with psychosis. Does this game give an accurate and good depiction of mental illness? Why or why not? Now, I have just listed a few examples for the humanities, and there are many, many more. I've also met with several faculty members of the STEM fields, mentioned air engineering before, and here's just some of the games that I mentioned to them. One game that I brought up to a professor was the game Plague Inc. In this game, you create a disease, and the goal is to wipe out the world. I make a joke to professors all the time. Somebody played this and went overboard, and that's how we got COVID. This game can help students understand how diseases evolve and mutate from something relatively harmless to something that's, well, not. This game would not necessarily help graduate level students, but it could help undergraduates get more involved in the field and learn different concepts. There are a couple of games that engineering took a great interest in. One was the game Polybridge. In this game, you construct a bridge that must hold the weight of vehicles and in some cases go around obstacles. Another game that the engineering faculty were particularly interested in was Coin Flipping Simulator for Probability and Statistics. This is a free game which just flips a coin over and over again. While this may seem to be the most boring game ever, as the name suggests, it is designed to help users with statistical problems. The last example of a STEM helpful game is Kerbal Space Program. While this game may look very cartoonish, it is based off of actual physics. If players do not build their rocket correctly and steer it properly, it will crash. Again, while this game might not be of interest to graduate level students, it could help undergrads understand some key concepts and become more interested in the field. At this point, it's easy to see that not only are video games and academic research a thing, but it is ongoing and likely to continue for many, many years. One thing I like to do when teaching general research workshops, like how to search our databases and how to find articles, is to search a general research topic like settler colonialism and add video games to it. Students are generally surprised at the results and then they start thinking about how to incorporate games that they have been playing. Currently, I have found about 10 gaming-specific academic peer-reviewed journals which accept all manner of topics. However, more traditional journals also publish articles with video games as their focus. One of my favorites that I like to bring up to students is this article from Russian literature. This article is by Daniil Lederman and focuses on Eastern Europe and highlights the games Stalker, Shadow of Chernobyl, Metro 2033, Papers, Please, This War of Mine, and Workers and Resources, Soviet Republic. The workshops, class interaction, and faculty consultations gave wonderful opportunities to explain how video games expand on topics and can be used in research and classes. However, there were some drawbacks to it. Since last semester was the first semester I did my individual workshops, they did not have good attendance. This upcoming semester, half of them will focus specifically on serious games, while the other half focuses on entertainment-focused games, and all of them will be hosted online. Online workshops, in general, tend to do better than in person. Besides my workshop, all of this information is available on a LibGuide that anyone can search for. You can see here the various topics that this LibGuide covers. While the workshops may have had low attendance, the LibGuide has a steady stream of visits. The last area of focus has been programming. While all of these programs have gaming aspects, most of them are entertainment related. They are designed to get the students into the library to have fun. Now, this may be considered a public library mindset, but the library should be viewed as a welcoming and open space to students. These programs help with that. Before I go into the fun, I want to discuss some various lessons I learned in the programming process. Since for many of these programs, I had to advocate to upper library administration to purchase materials and host the programs themselves, and that brought about its own lessons. Now, at Mississippi State University, all of our VR headsets can be found in the Digital Media Center, or DMC. These VR headsets also have gaming computers, so that's where video games are available to be played. Before going into the programming aspect, just some quick lessons about game and programming purchases. Survey your faculty and students and find out what games they want to play and include in their lessons. During faculty outreach, discuss what games would help them. For one program, I purchased games and these titles were not used by students at all. Namely, because the faculty and people my age found them interesting, not the students. Also, it is important to keep in mind that many students will find ways to play their favorite games. If they don't have a computer or a console, they have a phone. Many games that previously would not have been available on phones are now being developed for them. Two games that I have previously mentioned, This War of Mine and Polybridge, are now both available on phones. It is important to get with faculty when purchasing games and find out what is most beneficial for them. That way, the professor can say, for extra credit, go do this in the library. Now, for students, you have to give them a good reason to come in. For our VR headsets, we have a Vive, a Rift, and several MetaQuest 3s. They all have Steam accounts. And students can come in and log into their own Steam accounts and use the headsets to play VR games that, frankly, the library is not going to purchase. Think Fallout 4 VR or Skyrim VR. However, this can cause some issues. Many students will download programs, or mods, or other files, and then not let us know or take them off. So such steps have been taken to try to curb this download behavior, like requiring a passport before downloading anything. But this again has caused issues. So for purchasing video games, I don't have an active budget. All the games that were used in my programming were either free, already purchased, or bought with the use of a grant. Now, for these programs, they all had to be approved by my supervisor, and at the very beginning of my programming journey, the dean. So while explaining programs and advocating for them, and also when doing outreach to various departments, it's important to remember that administrators do not know common gaming terms. I've had to explain what Steam is so many times. Also, common definitions like it's an MMO will receive blank stares. When meeting with some engineering faculty at the very beginning, one asked, so we can find the games we want by searching just educational games, right? I had to explain that things like Polybridge and Kerbal, while they are educational and can be used in classes, they are not designated as educational games. So if you just searched under the tag educational games, you may be disappointed. Also, more professors than I would like to mention ask if we can host the games on Canvas. The short answer is no. I told them they could put links to purchase the games, mention various websites that held the information, or just broadly say gameplay can be found on YouTube. Many students, instead of playing a game, will just look up a Let's Play on YouTube, which of particular note, I had to explain what a Let's Play was several times as well. I have also been asked if different popular games could be saved in our institutional repository. I then had to explain that that violated copyright and that neither I nor they wanted to get involved with EA and that particular battle. So as you can tell, there's a disconnect between gaming and outside academia. Like other jobs, hobbies, and professions, there's a lot of jargon when it comes to video games. To help with that, I included a glossary on my LibGuide as well. These definitions not only include things like Steam and GOG, but also types of games such as MMOs, FPS, and platformer as well. And when questioning to add what to the glossary, occasionally I would ask my boss, do you know what blank are? And like, do you know what mods are? And if he said no, it went in the glossary. So be prepared to explain terms, some gaming basics, and also a little bit of copyright information when seeking support for games and programming. Another topic that came up in talks with administration, a lot of games include firearms. Given the polarizing aspects of gun ownership in the United States, this was viewed as problematic. Now, during these discussions, it was important to give them reasons why these games should be added. Yes, this game has guns, it depicts World War II. A real-life example is the game Boneworks. This is a first-person shooter VR game. However, it also has accurate physics and is entirely physics-based. Not because it has guns, because students could see how certain aspects of physics related in VR. That's why it was requested to be purchased. Indeed, after communicating with faculty and department liaisons, it was determined that this game was specifically requested because of the physics aspects. Now, will this be an issue at every university? I can't say, but it's something to prepare for. Give administration and faculty the information, all the information, what games are rated and why they are rated that way. Whether a game has guns, violence, sexual content, drugs, whatever. If the program comes into question later, the knowledge is there and also the reasoning behind why it was eventually added or rejected. Now, getting into the actual programs. All of these programs were hosted in our DMC, where the VR headsets are housed. These headsets are not checked out or used in different parts of the library. For the majority of these programs, I worked with MSU's Instructional Technology Specialist, Laura Taylor. She is the DMC specialist dealing with the VR, so she was nearby for all of the programs in case a headset broke or something went awry. She was an amazing help with these programs, so a big thank you to her. The top 4 programs which were held was a Beat Saber tournament, MLK Now Is the Time, which was part of Black History Month, de-stress games, and a Star Wars day. So I'm going to start with the program that went the best, and that was the Beat Saber tournament. We held this tournament twice, once at the end of fall semester and once at the end of spring. And we are planning to host it again for the upcoming fall. The Beat Saber tournament is held right before finals, on either the last day of class or on the reading day that falls between the last day of class or the first day of finals. Sorry, my dog just sneezed and it's cracking me up. Students are given 2 tries at Beat Saber on any level or difficulty, and their scores are recorded. The highest 3 scores win a prize. Laura and I decided at the original tournament to let them have 2 shots because everyone can have an off round. The scores are recorded in an Excel spreadsheet along with the student's name and contact information, aka their student email. After their 2 rounds, students could play as long as they wanted, as long as there was a headset open, and many stayed 4 hours. The tournament itself lasted about 4 to 5 hours, and that evening or the next day, the winners and participants were contacted. I chose to contact all of them because many students got very invested, and it also served as a reminder of the VR and the fun they had. The prizes did not cost a great deal of money. We had some swag left over that we gave for 2 of the prizes. However, we also had a string of LED lights. The first tournament, we had those as a second place prize. What we found were students were actively trying to get second instead of first to get the lights. So for the following tournament, we bought a set of lights and set them as the first place prize. These lights cost about $10, and the rest of the prizes were MSU swag. Beat Saber had been purchased several years ago, so the complete cost of this tournament was due to the advertising posters that were printed, which the DMC does in-house, and 1 string of lights. So overall, not too terribly bad for a successful program. Now, for some of the lessons that we learned in this program. 1, we quickly set up 2 Excel spreadsheets. One where students put their information, and another where we copied and pasted the information and put the scores. The reason was students would keep dropping by to see where they ranked. While this isn't a bad thing, if they saw an extremely high score, we didn't want them to tell their friends, hey, don't bother coming. We also learned after the first tourney to again put the LED lights as first place. However, there is another lesson to learn. While the first tourney had a great turnout, the one for the spring semester had less people show up. It was still a success, but there were fewer students. The best reason we can give for this is it's spring and there was nice weather. During the fall semester, finals take place in November, and it's cold, dark, and people want to do something fun. In spring, the weather is nice and it's not too hot and people want to be out in the sunshine. I even admitted to myself during the spring tourney that I would like to be outside. So hopefully the tourney at the end of this upcoming fall semester will see increased numbers again. It may be a program that only gets held at the end of fall semester. As for Black History Month programming, Dee Dee Baldwin, who is our engagement librarian, and I hosted the MLK VR experience. For this program, the VR Meta experience, Now Is the Time, was loaded onto the MetaQuest and made available for students to play. Now Is the Time is a free meta program that highlights different aspects of Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech in very interesting ways. It focuses on the difficulty that African Americans have in living conditions and voting. Several professors encourage their students to come and try out the experience for extra credit. Now, compared to the fun of Beat Saber, it is a very somber program, but it was meant to be. Now Is the Time is only available on Meta, but it's a free program. So again, the only cost was the advertisement done in-house by the DMC. While this program was deemed a success and will most likely be repeated next February, there are still some lessons that can be learned from this. The biggest lesson that Dee Dee and I would discuss was to advertise the program more. MSU libraries have a wide range of Black History Month programming, and it kind of got lost in the shuffle. Next year, it will have its own posters and it will have its own designated advertisement, and not just part of a month-long activities. Also, for the headsets, we originally planned to have 2 programs loaded. However, the other was no longer available except for certain dates. A good rule of thumb is to make sure all the VR programming is available and loaded on the headsets at least a day or 2 before official time. That way, if something goes wrong, there's still time to fix it. I try to get with Laura before every program just to make sure everything is ready to go. Again, this helps with unexpected incidents, like one of the headsets just deciding not to work that day. Now, Beat Saber and Black History Month were determined to be successes. The next 2 programs definitely were not. And they have common reasons for this, and some of those reasons I've already mentioned. The first of these was held the same week as Beat Saber tournament, and it was just simply a game de-stress. Games to help you de-stress. The plan was for relaxing video games to be loaded on the gaming PCs in the DMC, and students could come and play them while preparing and taking finals. The 3 games that were chosen were Katamari Damacy, Donut County, and Subnautica. And before anyone questions Subnautica, there is a build-only mode where you can just swim with the alien fish and not get eaten. However, these games got very little use. And in fact, students were only interested in playing Subnautica VR. Subnautica VR is so broken that a note was placed in our catalog record, don't try it. I tried to play Subnautica VR for about 10 minutes and it crashed twice. The developers pretty much just kind of gave up on it. Now, there are several reasons why these games were not used. The first is students don't really know Katamari Damacy or Donut County. These are older games, and while relaxing, many students may not have been exposed to them before. Another reason why this failed was there's no incentive for students to play them. There was no extra credit, there were no prizes, just basically saying, hey, come play. These games were bought with grant funding. So while this did not take budget from other areas, it took funding that could have been used for other programs. And yes, this might have worked well in a public library. It does not in an academic setting. Students would rather do a number of things besides just play games in the library. If you're interested in adding fun games to your library for students to play, again, you might want to survey the students and see what the top rated games currently are. Again, students were interested in Subnautica, but even then that interest has died relatively quickly. The last failed program was to host VR games for Star Wars Day. Since May the 4th was on a Saturday and the DMC was closed, technically it was Star Wars Day a day early. For this program, again, students could come and play, but this time it was Vader VR. Now, there were several reasons why it was thought this program would be different than the de-stress games. Star Wars is a pretty popular fandom, and the library had never done anything Star Wars Day before. Also, instead of just regular video games, this was a VR program. And it was not just any VR program, it was Vader VR, where you can use the Force. Overall, sounded interesting. It was also held near Beat Saber, where people could see there was another program coming up soon. Hopes were high. However, they didn't pay off. This program, again, took place in the spring. The weather was great, and students would rather be out and about than playing VR. Also, despite the interesting aspects, there was no true incentive for students to play. Prizes, nothing. Vader VR was purchased several years ago, so again, the only expense was advertising. However, the likelihood of having another Star Wars Day with just Vader VR will probably not happen. So, session is wrapping up. During it, we have gone over several things, a lot of details, what has worked, what has not, and a lot of lessons I learned during my first year as the gaming librarian. Over the past few semesters, it's been a great learning process, especially when it comes to workshops and programming. Before Beat Saber, there really had not been a great deal of programming, if any, that focused specifically on VR and video games. And even though some of the efforts have failed or not had the participation hoped for, we still learned some stuff. And we are looking forward to make changes and making things better. Everything has provided lessons to go forth in the future. Now, as far as video games and research is concerned, games have been part of academic research for a number of years. Just as movies, plays, graphic novels, and other media have been embraced by academic circles, so have video games, and they'll continue to do so. Whether it's serious games or those purely for entertainment, they will continue to be studied by the academic community. The day may come fairly soon when research is no longer hampered by writer's block, but lag. Thank you, and I will gladly take any questions. Okay, do you support game designs with engines like Unreal and Unity? Do you have consoles and support legacy platforms? Okay, thanks, Ken. We do not have any consoles or legacy platforms. Again, this is fairly new. We're kind of gauging interest, taking baby steps, that kind of thing. Also, with consoles, it's how would you check them out? How would you use them? There's a lot of logistics there that are unknown. Now, I mentioned what the library does. In our engineering department, there are 2 professors that actually have classes where students can make their own VR and video games. We are talking to those professors because since students are making those at the school, they can sign over their copyright or at least sign a waiver or something, and we can put those in the IR. That's an ongoing discussion. We're looking into it going further. So they create the games. I do believe we have subscriptions to Unreal and Unity too, but they haven't really been used either. So it's more the classes that are doing that in engineering. Okay, I stopped screen sharing. Does your library have a tabletop gaming collection? And so do you? Okay. So tabletop gaming, I've gotten with the tabletop gaming group. We are planning on doing a D&D session in spring. We're hoping to do that. We're talking to humanities students about hosting these because humanities, they deal with things like creating characters, creating stories. And so it's like they can handle this. Several of those students also play D&D, so they know what's up. The tabletop community, the tabletop group is going to meet with them and have volunteered to be a part of that. We do not have a gaming collection. We do have some of the D&D books. Now, our tabletop gaming group has a huge collection. So again, it is possible in the future to work with them. How do you handle all the anti-cheat software that requires regular updates? Okay. So our IT group, our library has its own IT professionals, and they handle a lot of the software. Now, they're the ones who set up, you have to log in. We are looking at getting, I think it's called Freezer Box, where we will reset the computer to its original stasis. But things like anti-cheat software that requires regular updates and system accounts, that's their bailiwick. They can have it. I don't want it. I leave it to them. It's one of those where Laura will indeed help me if a VR headset goes down, but when it comes to the administration things, that's our IT guys. So we leave it to them. Anything else? Happy to answer. Or you can just say, hey, this is my favorite game. I played this. I'm okay with that too. Is my slideshow available? I love Katamari too. For some reason, the students weren't into it. I think half of our library would have, the faculty and staff would have gone and played it. But Ken, I will gladly send my slideshow. I think my email is out there, but I'll put my email down in the chat. If you want my slideshow, just email me and I will be more than happy to send it to you. There it is. Guns in the game problem. Yep. So strategies I've used to communicate this. That was a very heated meeting with administration. It really is one of those things where you just have to sit it down and everyone needs to keep a cool head and just go forth. It got very, very heated. No, I don't have any strategies to communicate the guns issue, but like I said, give them all of the information. For Boneworks, it had guns, but it was physics based. And it's like, this is why the teachers want this, is because it depicts physics. And quite literally, it's impossible to get away from guns in movies and literature and everything else. I mean, it's everywhere. But it's also something that is very difficult in programming. And like you said, nobody has a problem with Godfather, but video games make it a touchy subject. So it's one of those where I could tell you something that worked for us, but your administration, it may work differently because they're different people. So I really don't. Just keep a calm head, cool head, and give them all of the information. Anything else?
Can I just ask a question out loud?
Sure.
It's easier than typing because I'm on a phone. Have you had any luck finding any VR applications for language? I have been helping the English as a second language program with their VR headsets, and you know, everything looks so cartoony. The application is good, like practicing buying things at a grocery store or speaking to a policeman or whatever, but it's just it doesn't make it worth being in VR because it just looks like a cartoon in 3D.
Well, the ones that I have given to people are not VR, they're video games. And sure. It's things like Duolingo. There's one on Steam, How to Learn Japanese, things like that nature. For the VR, it is very cartoonish. In fact, we had one we were going to buy, but because of how cartoony it was, we're like, our students are not going to play this. So I keep an eye out for it. Same history professor that was like, this isn't going to fit with us, wanted things that were civil rights based. And it's been very hard to find VR for specific things. Now, again, if you have faculty or staff in engineering that create VR programs, you may go up to them and be like, hi, can you make this? And that makes for some great collaboration between departments. But as far as finding one already made, no. The best bet would be there are several video games that are very well done that are non-VR. So I'm sorry I can't help you more, but it's one of those where I constantly look, like every month I'll go through a list and keep looking to see if anybody's come up with one. So thank you. Jonathan, that is a very, very long answer in the chat. Extremely long. I will say my top favorite games right now, I've been playing Mass Effect Legendary for a very long time, so it always has a place in my heart. I'm an RPG-er, action gamer, so take that what you will. Been playing Baldur's Gate a lot. We're not going to mention how many hours I have in Baldur's Gate, but it's a lot. So those are the kind of answers I give to that question. But yeah, I have a lot of them. So it's about 2:50. I know it's the end. I shared my email in the chat. So if you want to email me any other questions, feel free to. I've enjoyed talking with everyone. Again, this is a big topic, and it's continually changing because everybody keeps making things and new issues come up. So I can tell you, I don't know of a VR game, and then somebody will create one tomorrow. It's just, that's the way it is. But thank you, and I hope everyone has a great afternoon. Thank you.